Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Layla. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Gayatri Mago, our specialist orthodontist. Welcome to our team and this podcast, Dr. Mago.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leila. I feel quite at home already. So I'm so excited to be doing this with you. And thank you. Thank you for thinking of me for this.
Absolutely. It's truly our pleasure and honor having you. And today we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. Why I personally am told so many times a day that we are afraid of coming to the dentist.
Yes, it's always when they walk in, and the first thing people let out is, I hate going to the dentist. And before I would take it personally, I would be like, oh, this person hasn't met me. Why do they hate me? What did I do? And then now that I've started studying psychology, I can step back and reflect on the fact that it is their fear or their discomfort with the procedures that we have to offer, which is possibly their own perception of worst case scenarios that ends up getting projected onto me as a person
Correct.
versus, what we do. So now that I can isolate that, I only tend to empathize with the fact, and this is my biggest like flag that raises that yes, this person might be struggling with the elephant in the room, which
Mm-hmm.
is dental anxiety. And then it's only triggers the thought like, how can I help them? How can I tell them next time
Correct.
to be more at ease, or have them coming back and saying, well, you're not as bad. We're
Mm.
okay coming to you now.
So there's definitely true. There's a great aspect of psychology behind this, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. It stems from, as people, even though some of us are blessed to have very good balance in life in general with how things have worked out for us. But if you think about any situation, the first thought that's triggered is a worst case scenario,
True.
right? So, one of the reasons.
I know this being a mother.
Yes, absolutely. And I know this being like a perfectionist.
Mhm.
So for me, it's that thought that comes up first before anything else. And in general, now that I'm here, like through anything, I might have done well to be actually sitting across from you today, right?
Aw,
So it's obviously a mix of failures and positives as well, where
correct.
I would like to hope that the positives dominated. But then we have different psychologies. It's the worst case scenario where someone thinks, with an active imagination that something not so nice is going to happen to them. So they don't feel safe. And once these train of thoughts are triggered because of, a past bad experience or someone else, like we often see mothers, saying, when I used to go to the dentist, they would do this and I had my tooth pulled out. And it's just sometimes the phrases and words that people use to describe a procedure, it just makes it seem so daunting. And it's
Correct.
like planting a seed, any
Right.
thought. And it
Right.
keeps developing, it keeps
Yes.
developing. And that's why it's
And we
it's
pass it on generational.
absolutely.
Now we
And
know this.
no, exactly. And some parents, to motivate their kids to brush their teeth or not eat sugar, would use a phrase like, "Oh, if you don't brush your teeth tonight, you'll have a cavity, and the dentist will have to give you an injection." So when behavior conditioning is done to make going to the dentist look like a punishment,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's going to trigger fear.
Very correctly put.
Yes.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, for those listening, Dr. Gayatri isn't just a top notch orthodontist, she's also studying psychology. We're going to dive into how those two fields connect and why it matters for patient care. So, Dr. Gayatri, let's start with a basic question. What are some common psychological factors that contribute to dental anxiety?
So we were just discussing
Yeah.
around that, and I'll dive back into it. I think it is, your perception
Mm-hmm.
of what it's going to be like. You develop that thought, it progresses onto maybe this can happen, I'm going to have pain, I'm going to be uncomfortable. Oh, the mouth is a sacred space. Someone's going to look into my mouth. Someone's going to be very close. And some people have fear of smaller places. And it's a small place with so many stimuli that your
Correct.
body is taking in, even subconsciously.
Yes.
So it could be how the clinic smells that could trigger a previous memory. It could be the sound of a drill that
Right.
triggers a previous memory,
Right.
or just the orientation of the room, you know. So it's not just our active brain that perceives all of this. It's the body subconsciously taking in that environment. And then once they stop feeling safe, they feel that they've lost control. And then it just goes into the flight fight response.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
you're too triggered to then start calming yourself down or thinking about it rationally, or understanding that I'm here because I need to do this.
Yes.
And then most commonly it turns into, you know, an avoidance behavior, or they live through other people's experiences. Like a lot
Yes.
of people come in and say, when my sister was at the dentist, that happened. When my mother was doing this treatment, that happened. So they
Because we
don't
tend to grab onto the bad news. Bad news always wins, unfortunately.
I don't know why. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
And especially
It's-
in this day and age of Google, for example, sorry to cut you on this, but when I refer people for extraction, they immediately go to all these horror stories of extractions, you know, and then there's all these amazing extractions done in the world, but it seems like that takes priority in people's brains.
It does, because the thing is, again, what they're doing is they're breaking down how someone else would have felt into something that they would feel. Like they basically are associate. How would you know how much pain I felt
Yeah.
or what exactly I felt in that moment? It's just your imagination or your perception. And can you limit any of that?
Right.
Absolutely not.
Right.
So you go all the way from here to that, and then it becomes a memory. And the more you think about it, the more that memory pathway is strengthened. And then every time you come, you're a little jumpy. When the chair goes back, you're a little, oh, what's happening? When you
Right.
just spray air, you know,
Exactly.
what's happening to me now?
What we feed to our brain becomes the energy.
Exactly. And then if you hear it from somebody else, there's no way till you've had your own experience that you can define it for yourself. Because again, if you look at everyone's threshold, it's different. It might be
Absolutely.
very different for me. It might be very different for you.
Right.
My pain threshold could be way lower or way higher. My condition could be very different from you, even clinically. Even if I have to look
Correct.
at it scientifically, I may not have a tooth that's as decayed as someone else's.
Yes.
I may not have a tooth that, you know, and simple because of orthodontic extractions. You know, people start assuming that an orthodontic extraction is similar to a wisdom tooth extraction,
Yeah.
that it's going to be surgical.
Right. Right.
And then it's always when somebody else went for an extraction, they had to dig and it took 3 hours and stuff like that.
Yes. And I have to mention, you know, you're in different dentist hands.
Absolutely.
And people tend to forget that, you know, well, it all depends on who was doing the procedure. So very true about every single point. And I always thank the patient when they're finished with the treatment, because I say the hardest part was on you, because you really do lose control, especially for people like me who I don't even like sleeping on my back. I'm a
True.
side sleeper. So to go back, open your mouth, you know, and have all these lights things in your mouth, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
So having this background, and we'll get into it for yourself, I think I feel like I kind of became a mini psychologist just with the years of experience, you know, because you have to, with every patient that walks in, we kind of change to their psychology. But what you have done is you've taken it to a whole different level. You're studying it. So that's amazing, Dr. Mago.
Thank
Did you want
you.
to say something else?
I was just gonna refer back to the previous thought about, you know, the perception. Like, if you ever imagined yourself in a situation that makes you very anxious, right? Say sitting on a roller coaster. Do you actually even remember what happened?
Mm.
You never do.
Mm.
And again, it's only what you feel after. Like certain procedures do come with a little recovery discomfort,
Correct.
right? But
Correct.
when you're truly anxious, your response is so active that you're so focused on, just what's going on and how do I get out of this, that you actually don't even form a memory of what really happened if you just
Absolutely
think
true.
about it.
So, what can we as professionals do to help this situation?
True. So I think it is all about, anxiety, fight, flight response, not feeling safe because you've lost control. So somehow we need to shift the control back. That's why all of our practices from back in the day have changed now to being very patient centered or patient oriented, right? We recommend, we suggest, and we inform, but we do not impose a decision on anybody. Like, I remember in the past when I was growing up and I would have to go for these vaccinations, I would never be told. I would just be put on there, vaccination done, out in 5 minutes. I barely perceive the face of the person doing it.
Right.
But it's so different now.
Yeah.
Everybody has to be informed.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to be told what is exactly going to happen. So it gives control back in what to expect.
To the patient, yes.
And they can prepare themselves as well.
It's a connection.
It's
yes.
a connection. And I think it's rapport building. I think they need to understand that they're going to be safe with us. And another thing is, whenever we all have patients who ask a lot of questions, some patients ask questions because their mind is very wired scientifically. They just want to know. And some people ask you questions because they're not looking for answers. They're actually looking for reassurance that you need to tell them that they are going to be safe. You need to tell them that you will listen to them. You will respect how they are feeling, right? In terms of like certain patients, our impulse is to try to tell them that, we rationalize the fear for them. But we need to perceive, are they at that point where they're happy to rationalize the fear? Or are they at a point where they just want to express it and they want you to understand it and validate it, right? We all have our own, let's say, demons. I was
100%.
feeling very anxious before the podcast today.
Right.
I was feeling riled up, very wired. And how can I give myself the benefit of the doubt that I don't do this every day, so I'm allowed to be? But when somebody else walks into my room, I belittle their experience by, portraying my experience that I've done this 100 times. So what is there to worry? But they've not had it done 100 times.
Yes.
That's
the
one.
difference. That's the huge difference, I think.
Yes.
In our profession is that feeling that we relay to our patients.
Absolutely.
That and being listened to. I think as humans, we just want to be listened.
Absolutely.
And to be understood and to be looked after and cared for and loved. This is all justifiable, right?
Exactly.
And it holds very much with doctor-patient relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of studies that have shown that, if the patients trust the doctors, the outcomes are better. Even in psychology, if I stem away from
energy
dentistry,
again, yes.
Exactly. So it's the person of the therapist that matters way more than the type of therapy that they choose.
True.
Right?
True.
So it's about pushing back control. And if you do that effectively, then I think, they just automatically trust you. They know that they might feel uncomfortable in that moment from the procedure, which I think all of us do.
Yes. Including myself.
Yes, absolutely. As you said, lying back, having your mouth open.
True. I always say it's not easy, but it's definitely doable. And we always have ways, to help get through it.
Exactly. And it's so different from a surgeon performing something similar in the OR because the patient is under.
Yeah.
And there, I mean, I'm not remotely even implying that what I do is more serious than what they do, or they don't deserve enough credit. I couldn't imagine how they go to bed every night. I would be stressed
No,
worrying
very
about
stressful.
each and every patient. But then they are focused on the tissue. We are focused on an entire living being with rotary instruments that, even if it's like a cough or a sneeze, we can't use that as a justification if there was something that could have happened in the moment.
Right.
Somebody who's already anxious, you drop something in the mouth, all your senses are so active
Yes.
in keeping the patient.
Yes. It really keeps us on our toes.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is exciting, and I truly love it. It's so important to take that extra time with patients, as we know. And you're also studying how techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, can be used to manage dental anxiety. Tell us a little about that.
So basically, all of the things that we spoke about, what I meant to say was that some of the behaviors are all learned. And we always learn from either an experience that we have or from somebody else. And then we have thoughts about a situation, right? So it's any situation really. How we think about it is what controls how we feel about it. So CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy, tries to reverse how we think about a situation so that we feel okay about it, right? So if I give you an example, you were supposed to meet me for coffee today, let's say at 10 a.m. You know that I'm somebody who's always on time. It's 10:30 and I haven't showed up. What would you think?
Yeah, this person doesn't care.
Absolutely. And then what does that talk about, like make you feel about our relationship with each other? That
there isn't much of a relationship anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I could just be stuck in traffic. I could have just woken up late. But see, that one
Had a horrible night.
I could have had a horrible night. I could be sick, and I could still be driving to you, but I'm just a little late. So it's just how that thought defined how you feel about me, that experience. And then if we couldn't meet for some reason, you would come back and have a crappy day because you had a bad start to the morning. So similarly, if I feed into myself, oh, I'm going to have a dental visit tomorrow and it's going to be painful, I don't like it, I just hate going there. Instead, if I just told myself that I need to have this done, it is important for my oral and overall health. And just like in the past, I've always got through fine.
Correct.
There's already a difference as to how I'm going to start feeling about that situation.
True. And the more I listen to podcasts from various people, I've come to the conclusion that our reality is what we feed ourselves.
Absolutely.
Not what we think that it is this, but is what we actually want.
Exactly.
And that becomes reality.
Absolutely.
And if anything, please, I hope that's a take-home message for you guys. I mean, this is also beautiful, but really make your own realities in life.
Absolutely.
So this is such great practical approach. It's all about mindset. What about things like mindfulness or relaxation techniques? And how do those play a role in calming patients down before or during treatments?
So those are, again, very good techniques. We all, try and practice meditation. It's also linked, like there are different forms of meditations. So some of them are, associated with a specific breathing technique. So as I said before, I'll reference back to that. When you're anxious, your body goes into survival mode. It's like your flight fight response, and you sort of feel this tightness in your chest. You have shallow and rapid breathing, you have cold hands and feet, etc. And if you just in that moment wire back to just altering how you breathe, right? You can practice with like taking a deep breath, but you don't breathe from your chest. You actually breathe from your abdomen. So as you inhale, your stomach actually rises, and you breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it, breathe out. It sort of starts, reducing your heart rate, reducing your respiratory rate. You start feeling safe, right? One other
Breath is life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one other thing that like recently I've started doing with patients is to use meditation with while they're in the chair. So, you can give them headphones, and there's an app called Headspace.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many guided programs that people can pick and choose from. And while they're in the chair, all they have to do is focus on their breathing, or,
Ah,
whatever the technique takes them through, count objects, or think of being in a very happy place, just something that completely distracts them
that's
from
amazing.
the situation they're
I
in.
always tell them, do you have your AirPods, listen to a podcast or listen to music? But next time I'm going to mention to listen to these apps.
Yes, and there's one more thing. For kids especially, when nowadays a lot of dental clinics have televisions that children can look at,
Yes.
etc. So we all know that looking at the screen is an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And why is it addictive? Because it releases a lot of dopamine and it makes people feel really good. So, again, we could use tools wisely as well. So, if someone were to look at a screen or do an activity which makes them happy, which you can combine with something where there could be certain unpleasant stimuli,
Mm-hmm.
but they ought to be there. When the dopamine is released over a period of time, they might not associate that with a negative, feeling.
Interesting. Mm.
It might be a reward, especially for kids, to, come back for. Because even parents now, they ration
Correct.
screen time.
Correct.
So it sounds like a reward. So basically, you're reinforcing or conditioning them gradually to have a positive experience in the chair.
Great advice, honestly, for all of us. And it's something we can easily try. So, before we wrap up this episode, could you share a simple tip or coping strategy for anyone feeling anxious about an upcoming dental appointment?
I think it's best to just distract yourself till the time you get to the dentist. I think it's just go do your thing, live your life. Just don't focus on it and make it look big. A simple thing to remember is it is the dentist's job to keep you safe. They are well trained, they can do these procedures and execute them well for you. Another thing is that when they go in and they know that they're anxious, or it takes time for them to adapt to the procedure, it's good to inform the dentist as well, so that they don't necessarily impose a procedure on the same day. They can
Correct.
give you the information.
Feedback
you
is
need.
very important from our patients.
Absolutely. So they can give you the information, they can tell you about the procedure, they can take you through it, they can do some exercise.
We can take our time. We're here. I always tell
Absolutely.
patients, until the day I'm here, no rush.
Absolutely.
We can always postpone it to another day if you don't want. I know in Dubai, so sorry, people sometimes do want things done same day.
Same day, yeah.
Because it's all
Busy.
time.
Yeah.
But we cater to everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're ready for it, go for it. But sometimes when you push yourself hard enough, you become resentful because you don't want to have it done, but you know that you might not make time for it again. And then it becomes a negative experience for everybody. But take your time. If it's not an emergency procedure, take your time. There's no rush. But at the same time, sometimes we do not have a choice, right? But then
100%.
it's still important to then, talk to the dentist about it. You can do some breathing exercises,
Yes.
as I told you.
Right.
You can do some progressive muscle relaxation, some shoulder tapping, etc. And what you can do, even with an emergency procedure, is to build a safe signal with your dentist, right? That if you raise your hand, you expect them to stop.
Yes.
And I think if it's the first or the second time, a lot of the times, you're running on a clock, etc. And you know that you've got this, So you kind of like tell them, oh, just give me 5 seconds.
Just bear with it.
It's done.
Yeah.
But stop. If they know that you will stop, they will let you come back in
Yes.
and have it done.
It's the
again.
trust.
It's the trust.
Right.
And obviously, there are certain situations where you can't help it. If you're pulling a tooth out and a root is broken and coming out of the
100%,
socket,
right.
you can't stop. But in those situations, we can always get patients to pre-fill, questionnaires, gauge how much anxiety they have, or what their past experiences have been, how easily triggered they can be, and accordingly manage between actually using some calming techniques around them in the chair, or maybe seek pharmacological help in the form of
Beautiful.
some sort of anxiolytic medication that we could give them before they come in, or maybe sedation, or if the patient is, if the procedure is complicated, then, we obviously have to resort to general anesthetic or something like that. Another thing, if it's non-emergency, we can always use something called as exposure therapy, where you grade the extent of exposure.
Got
You
it.
can always start with treatments which are less invasive, which do not require,
Yes.
the
The smaller cavities for kids, at least. Yeah.
or cleaning or
Yes.
fluoride applications and stuff like that. And then build it over, because we perceive with all our senses. So once all of the other senses stop perceiving the environment as a threat, then the brain will also sync with that and automatically kind of start to relax.
That makes total sense. I mean, in the US, they always said, have priorities. And it was always cleaning first, the prophylaxis, to clean out the bacteria and everything. And I often tell patients, try to start with that, because it's like we have a clean palate and you're starting the trust process.
Exactly.
And again, what we think, that positive energy, I just want to talk about positive energy, ends up becoming really positive. And that's so important. This was so beautiful. Everything you said, I have gained so much from this. I mean,
Thank you.
a lot of it, I think, just over the years, I learned, and I have my own ways, but definitely I'd like to incorporate a lot of these other techniques that we discussed. And in our next episode, I'd like to dive deeper into the psychological realm of dentistry. And thank you so much, Dr. Gayatri, for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm happy to come back whenever you need me.
Absolutely. That will be very soon. Thank you all so much for staying till the end. Hopefully you gained a lot from this as much as I did, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.